They're coming after you.
The gunshot cracked through the midnight air like God's own judgment.
Eleanor's hands froze over the copper pot she'd been scrubbing, soap suds dripping back into the basin. That sound, she knew it too well. Metal meeting flesh, somewhere out beyond the twisted cottonwoods that marked her property line. On any other night, she might have blown out her candle and pretended she heard nothing. But this was Halloween, 1875, and her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. A soul saved on All Hallows Eve tips the scales between heaven and hell. Superstitious nonsense. Had to be. The wind howled against her cabin walls, rattling the shutters she'd meant to repair before October bit down hard. Eleanor dried her hands on her apron, reaching for the rifle above the fireplace. Her husband's rifle, the one that hadn't saved him when the Dalton gang came through last autumn. Her fingers traced the stock's familiar grooves. Then came the footsteps. Someone was dragging themselves across her porch. Eleanor cocked the rifle, aiming at the door. "I've got 12 rounds in a steady hand. State your business or bleed out somewhere else." The response was a wet cough and the sound of a body hitting wood. Counted her heartbeats, AT-20. Curiosity won over caution. She cracked the door open, rifle first. A man lay crumpled against her doorframe, one hand pressed to his side where blood seeped between his fingers like crude oil. His hat had fallen off, revealing dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He looked up at her through pain-glazed eyes, and something in her chest tightened despite itself. "Please." The word came out barely above a whisper. "They're coming." Eleanor should have shut the door, should have let the desert take him the way it had taken so much else. But those eyes, Christ, they reminded her of a wounded coyote she'd found as a girl, trapped and desperate, but still fighting to live. "Who's coming?" "I'm sorry. Shouldn't have. Didn't mean to bring trouble to." He passed out before finishing, his hand sliding away from the wound. The blood flow increased immediately. Eleanor cursed. The storm was building. She could smell it coming. That sharp, electric scent that meant the sky was about to open up. If she left him out here, the rain would wash away his body by morning. Clean. Simple. No one would ever know. She grabbed him under the arms and pulled. The man was deadweight, easily over 200 pounds of muscle and leather. Eleanor's shoulders screamed in protest as she dragged him across the threshold, leaving a crimson trail on her clean floorboards. She kicked the door shut with her boot heel and dropped him near the fireplace, already breathing hard. "If you die in my house, your ghost better have the decency to be quiet," she muttered, kneeling beside him. She'd done this before. Scissors through his shirt revealed a bullet wound in his left side, just below the ribs. Through and through, by the look of it. Entry and exit holes, which meant no digging for metal. Small mercy. Eleanor pressed clean rags against both wounds, applying pressure. The man groaned, eyes fluttering. "Stay quiet," she hissed. "You want to draw whoever's chasing you right to my door." His eyes opened fully then, and even through the pain, she saw intelligence there. Calculation. She'd seen it before in the men who killed her husband. That constant assessment of threats and opportunities. "What's your name?" "Jake." He grimaced as she pressed harder. Jake Morrison. The name meant nothing to her. Good. That meant he probably wasn't famous enough to have bounty hunters swarming. Just garden variety trouble. "Well, Jake Morrison, you picked a hell of a night to get yourself shot." Wasn't exactly planned. His voice was stronger now, though still threaded with pain. Train robbery went sideways. Things always get complicated when you're stealing. Eleanor moved to her medicine shelf, pulling down whiskey, needle, and thread. "This is going to hurt. Can't hurt worse than the bullet." She poured whiskey directly into the wound without warning. Jake's back arched, and he bit down on his own hand to keep from screaming. Eleanor waited for the initial shock to pass, then threaded her needle by candlelight. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains like 1,000 horses stampeding. "Tell me about the train," she said, starting on the exit wound. "Keep him talking, keep him conscious." Jake's breath came in ragged gasps. "What's to tell? We stopped the 10:15 out of Cheyenne. Rich folks heading to Denver. Should have been easy. But there was a kid. Couldn't have been more than 12, holding his mama's hand. When my partner raised his gun, he stopped, jaw clenching as Eleanor pulled the thread through. I knocked the gun away. Partner didn't take kindly to that." Eleanor's hands paused for just a second. "Former partner. He's probably leading the others here right now." "How many?" 4, maybe 5. Depends on who bled out. She finished the back wound and moved to the front, working by feel as much as sight. The storm had arrived in full force now, rain hammering the roof like bullets. At least that would cover their tracks, make it harder for anyone to follow. Why'd you do it? Eleanor asked. Why save the kid? Jake was quiet for so long she thought he'd passed out again. When I was 17, I thought I was invincible. Talked him into robbing a general store in Abilene. Owner shot him right in front of me. Eleanor tied off the final stitch. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring him back. Neither does killing. But I keep seeing his face in every kid I meet. His eyes found hers in the firelight. Your husband. The way you talk about that rifle. Bandits. The Dalton gang came through last October, she finally said. Wanted fresh horses, food, ammunition. Thomas, my husband, he told them to take what they needed and go. But they wanted more. They always want more. She stood abruptly, moving to wash the blood from her hands. He bought me time to hide. That's all. I'm sorry. Don't. The word came out sharper than she intended. Don't apologize for something you didn't do. You're not them. Are not. Jake's laugh was bitter. I've robbed stages, trains, banks. Held guns on people who didn't deserve it. The only difference between me and the men who killed your husband is I haven't murdered anyone yet. But I've come close. Too close. Eleanor turned to face him. Yet here you are, bleeding in my cabin because you wouldn't let a child die. One good deed doesn't erase 1,000 bad ones. Maybe not, but it's a start. Thunder shook the cabin walls. The candle flame danced, casting wild shadows across Jake's face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Eleanor could feel something shifting between them, some understanding forming that she didn't have words for. Then she heard the horses. Multiple riders, approaching fast despite the storm. Eleanor grabbed her rifle and moved to the window, peering through a crack in the shutters. 5 shapes materialized from the darkness, men on horseback, weapons drawn. Cellar, she said. Now. Jake struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his bandaged side. I can't let you. You can't do anything in your condition except get us both killed. Move. She pulled up the trapdoor in the floor, revealing the small root cellar below. Jake descended the ladder with visible effort, and Eleanor dropped the door shut just as fists pounded on her front door. Open up. We know he's in there. Eleanor took a breath, smoothed her apron, and opened the door halfway. 5 men stood on her porch, soaked to the bone and mean as rattlesnakes. The one in front, tall, with a scar running from temple to jaw, was clearly the leader. Ma'am. He touched his hat in a mockery of courtesy. We're looking for a man. About 6 foot, dark hair, shot in the side. Seen anyone matching that description? I've seen no one. I live alone. The scarred man's eyes traveled past her, taking in the bloodstains on the floor. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. That's so? Because it looks like someone's been bleeding in your parlor. Eleanor didn't flinch. Cut my hand butchering a chicken. If you don't believe me, I can show you the bandage. Won't be necessary. He pushed past her, the others following. They spread through her small cabin like a plague, overturning furniture, checking closets. One of them noticed the trapdoor. Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. What's down there? Scarface asked. Root vegetables and preserves. I'd offer you some, but I don't feed men who break into my home. He laughed and nodded to one of his men. Check it anyway. The outlaw pulled up the trapdoor and descended. Eleanor heard him moving around below, the sound of jars being knocked over. She kept her expression neutral, though her palms were slick with sweat. The man climbed back up, shaking his head. Nothing but potatoes and old preserves. Smells like death down there. That's the turnips, Eleanor said. They've gone bad. I meant to clear them out. Scarface studied her for a long moment. You're awfully calm for a woman with 5 armed men in her house. I've had worse company. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. The Dalton gang taught me not to scare easy. Something flickered in his expression, recognition, maybe respect. He whistled to his men. He's not here. Probably crawled off to die in the canyon. Let's move. They filed out into the storm, leaving Eleanor's door swinging open. She waited until she couldn't hear the horses anymore before closing it and throwing the bolt. Her legs nearly gave out with relief. She opened the trapdoor. Jake was pressed against the far wall of the cellar, hidden in a narrow gap behind the preserved shelf. Clever. The space was barely wide enough for a man his size, but in the dim light, it was invisible. You can come up now. He climbed out slowly, and Eleanor saw he was shaking, not from fear, but from exertion. The wound had started bleeding again. Your turnips do smell like death, he said, and despite everything, Eleanor found herself smiling. Sit. Let me check those stitches. 2 stitches had torn, but the damage was minimal. She repaired them quickly, and this time Jake barely flinched. Why'd you do that? He asked. Hide me. Eleanor paused, needle halfway through another stitch. I don't know. Maybe because I'm tired of death. Maybe because my grandmother's voice won't shut up about saving souls on Halloween. Maybe because I'm just a fool. You're not a fool. Jake's hand covered hers, stopping her mid-stitch. His palm was rough with calluses, warm despite the blood loss. You're someone who still believes people can be better than their worst moments. That's rare. Don't lose it. Eleanor looked at their joined hands, feeling something crack open inside her chest. When was the last time someone had touched her with anything resembling gentleness? When had she last felt anything but grief and anger? She pulled away, finishing the stitch. You should rest. I'll keep watch. But Jake didn't rest. Instead, he started talking. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about a father who drank and a mother who died young, about his brother Samuel, who'd followed him everywhere like a shadow, about the war that had taken their farm and left them with nothing but guns and desperation, about the first robbery, the second, the 10th, about how easy it became to rationalize, to tell himself the banks and trains had insurance, that the rich could afford to lose a little. When did you realize you were lying to yourself? Eleanor asked. 6 months ago. There was a bank in Tucson. We got in, got the money, everything smooth. But on the way out, I looked back through the window, saw a teller's hands shaking as he tried to pick up the coins we'd spilled. He was crying. I'd done that to him, put that fear in his eyes. That's when I knew. Then why keep doing it? When you've been running one direction your whole life, turning around feels impossible. Eleanor fed another log to the fire, watching sparks spiral up the chimney. Until tonight. Until tonight, Jake agreed, when a bullet gave me no choice. They sat in silence, listening to the storm's fury gradually diminish. Eleanor found herself studying his profile in the firelight, the strong jaw, the lines around his eyes that spoke of too many hard years. He was handsome in that worn, weathered way of men who'd lived rough. But it was more than that. There was an honesty in his expression now, a vulnerability he probably didn't show often. Do you see him? She asked suddenly. Your brother? When you were in the cellar, while you were feverish earlier, you kept talking to someone named Sam. I thought maybe you were hallucinating, but the way you spoke, it sounded like he was right there with you. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Sometimes, usually when I'm about to do something stupid, he tells me to think it through, like he always did when we were kids. Tonight, while I was hiding, I swear I heard him say, she's got more courage than both of us combined. Don't waste it. Smart brother. Do you see your husband? Eleanor's throat tightened. Every day, in the garden he planted, in the chair he built, in the space beside me at night where he should be. She blinked hard against the sting of tears. But I don't hear him anymore. His voice has faded, and I hate myself for letting it go. That's not letting go. That's surviving. There's a difference. Is there? Because most days it feels like betrayal. Jake reached out again, and this time Eleanor didn't pull away. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, and the gesture was so simple, so human, that it threatened to undo her completely. My brother's voice hasn't faded because I won't forgive myself, Jake said. Your husband's has faded because you have. That makes you the stronger one. A log cracked in the fire, sending up a shower of embers. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Dawn couldn't be far off now. You should sleep, Eleanor said, her voice rough. You've lost a lot of blood. So should you. Someone needs to watch for your friends coming back. They won't. Not tonight. Scarface, that's Deacon Marsh. He's mean, but he's not patient. If they didn't find me here, they'll assume I crawled off somewhere to die. They'll loot my share of the gold and call it even. The gold. How much? Enough to start over, if I knew where I hid it. Jake's smile was crooked. I buried it before I got shot, but between the blood loss and the dark, I'm not entirely sure where. Somewhere near the old mission, I think. The one 5 miles west? The one that's been abandoned for 20 years. That's the one. Eleanor stood and moved to her window, watching the first hints of dawn paint the horizon. When you're strong enough to ride, you should head for California. I hear there's work in the orchards, no questions asked. Is that what you want? For me to leave? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Eleanor didn't turn around. I want you to have a chance at the life you're talking about. The one where you're not running. What about you? What do you want for yourself? Now she did turn, meeting his gaze across the small room. I don't know anymore. For a year, all I've wanted is revenge. To see the Dalton gang swing. To make them pay for what they took from me. But tonight, watching you choose a child's life over your own freedom, I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of being angry. Anger keeps you alive. So does hope. I'd almost forgotten that. Jake tried to stand, but his legs buckled. Eleanor caught him, and suddenly they were close enough that she could feel his breath on her face. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she should have stepped back, should have maintained the distance. But she didn't. Eleanor, he said softly, if I stay, don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. I'm making the only promise I can. If I stay, I'll spend every day trying to be the man you saw in me tonight. The one who was worth saving. Her heart hammered. And if the law comes, then we deal with it together. But I'm done running. Done with the life that got me shot on your doorstep. I want. He paused, seeming to search for words. I want to wake up without checking over my shoulder. I want to build something instead of taking. I want a chance to be more than the sum of my mistakes. Eleanor pulled back, needing space to think. This was insane. She'd known this man for less than 12 hours. He was an outlaw, wounded and wanted. Hiding him was one thing. Committing to him was another entirely. But when had her life been anything but insane? She was a widow at 32, alone on a hard-scrabble piece of land with nothing but memories and ghosts for company. She'd already made peace with dying here, eventually. What if she could choose to live instead? The gold, she said finally. We'll find it, return it to the railroad. Anonymous tip. That's the first step. Jake's eyes widened. That's theft from thieves. Railroad won't ask questions. I don't care. You don't build a new life on a foundation of stolen money. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. We. Eleanor felt the words settle into her bones. We. But you work. You help me with the harvest, repair the roof, fix the fence. You earn your keep, and you earn the right to stay. And the first time you lie to me, the first time I catch you looking sideways at an easy score, you're gone. Understood. Jake's face transformed. The hardness she'd seen earlier melted away, replaced by something so achingly vulnerable it hurt to witness. Understood. They shook on it. A formal agreement between two people who'd found each other in the darkness. Then Jake swayed, and Eleanor guided him to her bed, the only bed in the cabin. I'll take the floor, she said. I've slept in worse places than wood. You take the bed. You're injured. All the more reason I can handle some discomfort. His smile was tired but genuine. Besides, my mama raised a gentleman. Outlaw or not, I still know how to treat a lady. Eleanor didn't argue. She was too exhausted, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened. She lay down fully clothed, pulling a quilt over herself, and watched Jake settle by the dying fire with a blanket. Jake? Yeah. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for not shooting me when you had the chance. She smiled despite herself. Night's not over yet. His laugh was soft. Fair enough. Eleanor closed her eyes, but sleep evaded her. Her mind raced with everything that needed to happen, finding the gold, returning it, figuring out how to keep Jake hidden until the bounty hunters moved on. It was too much, too complicated. But then she heard it, soft, almost imperceptible. Jake was humming. A lullaby, or maybe a hymn. Something low and soothing that reminded her of summer evenings before the war, before everything went wrong. She let the sound wash over her, and finally, blessedly, sleep came. Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, she thought she'd dreamed the entire night. Then she sat up and saw Jake at her stove, moving carefully as he worked the pot. He'd found her husband's spare shirt and pants. They fit him reasonably well. Thought you'd be hungry, he said without turning around. I found eggs and some bacon. Hope that's all right. Eleanor rubbed her eyes. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bright and warm. A new day. How long have you been up? Hour, maybe two. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. She joined him at the stove, and he handed her a cup of coffee. Their fingers brushed, and Eleanor felt that same electric jolt from the night before. The wound. Sore, but I'll live. Your stitches are holding. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, and Eleanor found herself cataloging small details. The way Jake held his fork, the slight limp when he walked, the way his eyes constantly tracked to the windows. Old habits dying hard. We should look for the gold today, she said, before anyone else comes sniffing around. Jake nodded. I'll need a horse. Can't walk 5 miles in this condition. You can take Lady. She's stubborn, but she'll get you there. You're not coming? Eleanor paused. Was she? Going along meant making herself complicit in whatever came next. But leaving him to go alone meant trust without verification, and she wasn't quite ready for that. I'm coming. Someone needs to make sure you don't pass out halfway there. They set out an hour later, Jake on Lady and Eleanor walking alongside. The October air was crisp, scented with sage and pine. Storm clouds still dotted the horizon, but above them the sky was blue enough to hurt. Jake was quiet, focused on staying upright in the saddle. Eleanor let him be, using the time to organize her thoughts. Last night had been impulse, emotion. This morning demanded practicality. If they returned the gold, would that be enough? Would Jake's former gang leave him alone, or would they see it as betrayal? And what about the law? Even if Jake wanted to go straight, past crimes didn't simply disappear. What are you thinking about? Jake asked. All the ways this could go wrong. That's a long list. Tell me about it. Eleanor kicked a stone, watching it skitter ahead. What was the take? From the train? 20,000, give or take. Railroad payroll bound for Denver. Eleanor whistled low. That's enough to get a lot of people killed. Yep, which is why Deacon and the boys won't quit easy. They think I have it, and they're right. He shifted in the saddle, grimacing. But if we return it, the railroad will hush it up. They don't like advertising successful robberies, encourages copycats. So we send the gold back, and you're just another outlaw who disappeared into the desert. Something like that. They reached the mission as noon approached. It was a sad structure, adobe walls crumbling, roof caved in on one side. Coyotes had made it their home, judging by the tracks. Jake dismounted slowly, scanning the area. I think there, by the bell tower foundation. They searched for half an hour before Eleanor's shovel hit metal. Together, they unearthed 2 canvas bags, heavy with coin and bills. Jake opened one, and even in the harsh sunlight, the gold gleamed. $20,000, Eleanor breathed. I've never seen so much money. Neither had I, before yesterday. Jake closed the bag. It's not ours. Never was. They loaded the bags onto Lady, and Jake pulled himself back into the saddle. But as they turned to leave, riders appeared on the ridge. 5 of them. Deacon Marsh sat at the center, and even from a distance, Eleanor could see his smile. Well, he called out. Look what we found. A dead man and his nurse, playing in the dirt. Jake's hand went to his hip, where a gun should have been. Eleanor had made him leave it at the cabin. Deacon, Jake said evenly. Walk away. This doesn't concern you anymore. Like hell it doesn't. That's my money on your horse. It's the railroad's money. I'm returning it. Deacon laughed, and his men joined in. Returning it? Jake, did that bullet scramble your brains? We worked for that score. Lost 2 men getting it. You're gonna walk away. Already walked. Now I'm just tying up loose ends. And the woman? Deacon's eyes slid to Eleanor. She a loose end too? Eleanor felt Jake tense beside her. Leave her out of this. Can't do that. She's seen us. She knows our faces. That makes her a liability. Eleanor stepped forward. I don't care about your faces. All I want is for you to ride out of here and never come back. Brave words. Deacon walked his horse closer. But bravery don't stop bullets. Neither does being 5 against 2. Eleanor's voice was steel. But I guarantee at least one of you dies if this goes sideways. You want to bet it won't be you. Deacon pulled up short, reevaluating. Eleanor met his gaze steadily, and for a long moment, no one moved. Then Jake spoke. Deacon, I'm offering you a way out. The railroad doesn't know who hit them. Far as they're concerned, it could have been any gang. But if you kill us, if you take this gold, they'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. They've got Pinkerton money. They've got resources you can't imagine. And if we let you return it, then you're ghosts. You disappear, lie low for a year, and when you resurface, no one connects you to this job. Clean slate. Deacon chewed his lip. What about your share? Consider it payment for the bullet you put in me. One of Deacon's men, a wiry kid who couldn't be more than 19, spoke up. Boss, maybe he's right. That Pinkerton detective in Tucson, he... Shut up, Charlie. Deacon's jaw worked. Jake, you always were the smart one. Pain in my ass, but smart. So we have a deal? On one condition. You disappear too. I hear you're still breathing in 6 months. I come back to finish the job. Same goes for the woman. Jake nodded. Done. Eleanor wanted to argue, but Jake's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Trust me, the gesture said. Deacon wheeled his horse around. Let's ride, boys. I need a drink and a game of cards. And Jake, happy Halloween. Maybe the last one you see. They vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving Eleanor and Jake alone with $20,000 and a second chance neither had expected. Think he'll keep his word? Eleanor asked. Deacon's mean, but he's practical. He knows I'm right about the Pinkertons. Jake sagged in the saddle. But we should still disappear. California, maybe. Or Oregon. Together? The word hung between them, loaded with possibility. Jake looked down at her, and in his eyes Eleanor saw hope mixed with fear. If you'll have me. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy, but... It's insane. Eleanor interrupted. You're an outlaw. I'm a widow. We met 12 hours ago because you bled on my porch. Is that a no? Eleanor thought about her empty cabin, her lonely days, her nights filled with ghosts. She thought about Jake's hands on hers, his voice humming her to sleep. She thought about choice, how rare it was, how precious. It's a yes, she said. But we do this right. We return the gold. We settle my affairs. We leave properly. No more running in the dark. Jake's smile could have lit the whole desert. No more running in the dark. They made it back to town by evening, leaving the gold at the telegraph office with an anonymous note for the railroad. Then they returned to Eleanor's cabin, where Jake finally let himself collapse. Eleanor tended his wounds again, and as she worked, Jake caught her hand. Don't thank me yet. Disappearing together is going to be complicated. I know, but I'd rather be complicated with you than simple with anyone else. She laughed, and it felt like the first real laugh she'd had in a year. You're delirious from blood loss. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally thinking straight for the first time in my life. Eleanor finished bandaging him and sat back. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was beautiful, the kind of beauty she'd stopped noticing somewhere along the way. Jake. Yeah. When you're healed, and we've sold my land, and we're ready to leave. Where do we go? He thought about it, his hand still holding hers. Somewhere green. With actual rain, not just dust and storms. Somewhere we can plant things and watch them grow. That sounds nice. Yeah, it does. They sat together as darkness fell, two damaged people who'd found each other on the strangest of nights. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the cottonwoods. But inside Eleanor's cabin, by the fire's warm glow, something new was beginning. A story neither of them had expected. A chance neither of them deserved. And maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. Jake fell asleep first, his breathing evening out. Eleanor stayed awake, watching him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, selling the land, avoiding questions, planning their route west. But tonight, she let herself simply exist in this moment. She'd saved a dying bandit on Halloween. And somehow, impossibly, he'd saved her right back. Not from danger, or poverty, or even loneliness, but from the weight of a grief so heavy she'd forgotten what it felt like to hope. Eleanor touched Jake's hand one more time, then banked the fire and settled in to keep watch. Dawn would come soon enough, and with it, all the complications of choosing to live instead of merely surviving. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she had this. A man who'd chosen mercy over violence. A future that was uncertain, but possible, and the strange, unexpected peace of knowing she wasn't alone anymore. The wind whispered through the eaves, carrying away the last traces of the storm. And in its wake, Eleanor heard something she'd thought lost forever. Her husband's voice, soft and approving. Live, Eleanor. Just live. She closed her eyes and smiled. Halloween, 1875, would go down in her memory not as a night of ghosts and fear, but as the night everything changed. The night she nursed a dying bandit. The night she stole his heart. And the night he stole hers right back.